Hi, thank you very much. I think when we talk about cancers in general, the most common that we see among men is actually lung cancer. If we include women in that picture, the most common would be actually breast cancers among women. Very closely behind, followed by cervical cancer for women. But if we actually include men and women as a whole, lung cancer is actually the most common cancer in our country, followed very closely behind by colon cancer when we add men and women together. But of course, in general, for women per se, breast cancer tops the list in terms of the most common cancer that we see. So the most common symptom of breast cancer is actually a painless breast lump, which can be very deceiving sometimes because many women tend to think that if there is no pain, it cannot be something very dangerous, and sometimes that delays patients from seeking treatment or attention. So the most common symptom of anyone having a tumor in the breast is actually a painless lump, which is progressively growing with time. Other symptoms which can appear is sometimes very subtle things like a rash over the skin at the breast area, or some dimpling of the skin which is new, or a nipple which suddenly appears distorted or different compared to the other side of the breast. And sometimes it can only be just lymph nodes, but in the axilla or the armpit area rather than in the breast itself. In some rare instances, the patients don't really feel a lump in the breast, but they have got lumps elsewhere, meaning the tumor may have spread, like in the neck region, or they've got bloatedness, or the tummy which is swelling up due to fluid or other things. But these are usually in more advanced stages of disease. In tumors which are early, the most common symptom is a lump or skin changes or nipple changes that we can sometimes observe. So breast cancer actually has been associated with several risk factors, but I would like to stress that it does not mean that everyone who is diagnosed with breast cancer definitely has one identifiable risk factor. Sometimes there's no real risk factor that we can actually come down to, but frequently or commonly seen risk factors are basically early age of menarche, patients who attain menses at a very much younger age, or delayed menses, menopause we say, meaning patients who had many years of ovulation as well as menstrual cycles. It's a risk which is associated, but it's not 100%. Women who breastfed have a lower risk of breast cancers. But having said that, it does not mean that everyone who has breast cancer never breastfed. So it's a risk association which differs in terms of its intensity. But breastfeeding is associated with a lower risk. Patients who are obese, a higher body mass index, are actually associated with a higher risk of breast cancers. So hence, regular exercise, having a low body weight would actually be protective towards breast cancers. This issue about taking exogenous hormones, meaning oral contraceptive pills for prolonged durations, hormone replacement therapies for long durations. So I think most patients who are put on these treatment would be advised by their doctors about this risk which is associated, and hence patients need to be monitored very closely if they are on any of these hormone therapies, because sometimes these hormone therapies may be as part of treatment, for instance for menorrhagia, heavy bleeding, or gynae problems where they need to be on hormonal therapies. So for those patients who are on long-term therapies like this, screening, mammograms, ultrasounds, looking out for these possible chances of a cancer developing has to be done very carefully actually. So maybe I'll talk first about the screening methods that we have for breast cancer in general. So in most developed countries, actually, mammogram or ultrasound breast screening actually forms part of the national screening program that they have in their countries. So of course in Malaysia, it is not yet a national screening program, but we do have a lot of effort and measures which have been done with regards to screening women who are actually very well. So this means doing mammograms in women above the age of 40, irrespective of whether they have a family history, irrespective of whether they have got symptoms or any risk factors actually. So it means mass screening of the population in general. So for women who are above 40, the advised method of screening is actually mammograms. For women below the age of 40, it is actually ultrasounds. The main reason for the difference between mammograms and ultrasounds is because the density of the breast is actually very different for younger women compared to older women. So above the age of 40, the breast tends to be less dense with a higher proportion of fat content, and hence the mammograms are more sensitive in bringing up disease rather than ultrasounds. But quite often both would be done in complementary to each other. So when we talk about screening of patients who are actually very well, just to look out for early tumors, ultrasounds and mammograms would be the gold standard. In patients who already have got symptoms, for instance a BAS which is detected, then definitely ultrasounds and mammograms would be done, as well as a biopsy to confirm the nature of that mass that they actually feel. In terms of genetic testing, so genetic testing is a method of looking for any likelihood of this disease being genetically inherited in the family. Not all women would need a genetical DNA test or whatnot. So usually the oncologist or the surgeon who is seeing the patient would actually risk stratify the patients based on their genetical risk. So women who present at a younger age, for instance in their 20s or 30s with either breast cancers, ovarian cancers, pancreatic, colon cancers are actually potential patients for genetic testing. Besides younger women, women who have got strong family history of blood relations with these tumors are also potential candidates for genetic testing. Or of course more than 2 family members, close blood relations actually. So it may not have to be only breast cancer among family members, because there are many genetic conditions whereby it could be breast in combination with ovarian or pancreatic or colon cancers, depending on the type of genetical defect that we are looking for. So I think the key point here is to actually discuss it with your surgeons or oncologists who would be able to risk stratify, meaning to see what is the potential risk of a genetical condition happening here, and hence refer to an appropriate geneticist who will be able to do the exams, the tests, and take it forward from there. Yeah, so this area of research which is looking into the presence of lymph nodes which swell after vaccination is actually a very well-known entity. So it does not mean that only patients with cancer experience this problem of lymph nodes which are swelling up after vaccination. It is a very known entity whereby even average patients who are very well post-vaccination get some lymphadenopathy, which means swelling of the lymph nodes, typically in the axillary area or the armpit area. So that does not mean that it is cancerous, it just means that the lymph nodes are reacting towards the vaccine, which can happen with our mRNA vaccines and whatnot. So there are actually several guidelines which actually look into interpreting lymph node swelling which is detected incidentally on ultrasounds or in mammograms or even in CT scans for that matter. So the general advice that we all know based on guidelines is that if a patient is known to have cancers or a patient happens to be going for a scan for whatever reason, is to document very clearly the date of the vaccination prior to the scans. So we do know that this incidence of these lymph nodes swelling, either due to normal causes or not, is actually highest within the first few weeks after vaccination. So as much as possible, we try not to do scans very soon after vaccination in patients, knowing that there is this risk of lymph nodes which may swell up. It may not mean that the cancer is progressing, it just mainly means that there is a non-cancerous cause for a lymph node swelling, which can sometimes confuse between disease progression as well as just a normal swelling which is occurring. And I think radiologists have also got their own guidelines, international guidelines, which have characteristics of these lymph nodes, which help them decide how significant is this lymph node swelling. Sometimes if we do see it happening, we just repeat the scans after 6 to 8 weeks to see how these lymph nodes are doing. Majority of the time, it's just a swelling which is self-limiting and it goes off on its own. But to date, there is actually no evidence that vaccination causes progression of cancer or worsens outcome of treatment or anything of that sort. But it is a point to note that some patients do experience lymph nodes which are already cancerous, swelling up a little bit but later regressing with time after vaccination. For the survivors of breast cancer, what I would like to say is that I think advancements in cancer care is so tremendous nowadays. The outcomes that we are seeing with all the treatment that we have available now is really very different compared to what it was 10 or 20 years ago. The point is that for women not to be afraid to come forward to seek treatment as well as to be diagnosed, because we know that outcomes are definitely much better than what it was before. Side effects of treatment is definitely far more tolerable as well compared to what it was. So I think patients nowadays have a much wider choice of treatment, which is far more acceptable as well as far more tolerable. Quality of life is definitely much better than what it was. So even in patients who have got advanced disease at the time of presentation, outcomes are still definitely better than before. Of course, detecting disease at an earlier stage will make the biggest difference in terms of translating to a good outcome in the long run. So early detection is key, but even if patients do get diagnosed at a stage where it is not early anymore, outcomes of therapies are still good and options are definitely available.